hopefully this will not like create this little feedback loop since I'm going live on Facebook, but I'm doing it through Zoom. So we're gonna trust Zoom, although they kind of landed on their face yesterday morning. Okay, I think we're there. I think we are. I think we're out there live. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're glad you could join us. We've got a great panel. I'm Chris Reese with Atlanta Soundworks. We want to welcome you to our web panel called The Future of the Gathering. COVID-19 has really had an impact on our congregations and how we think about coming together as a group, how we think about what the sizes of those groups are, and just the church in general. And so we've assembled a wonderful panel for you. We've got Amber Stewart with New Hope Baptist Church. Welcome, Amber. We've got Chris Seidman with the Branch out of Farmers Branch, Texas. And we've got Tyler Volkers with the Vine out of the Milwaukee area. And so we're so happy to have you guys, and thank you for sharing your time with us to be a part of this panel. And we're going to get going. We are also, if you are watching this and you're probably, as we get into this content, you're going to realize, man, I wish so-and-so was hearing this. We are recording this. We'll put it on the Atlanta Soundworks YouTube channel. So you can go to YouTube, do a search for Atlanta Soundworks, and then make sure you subscribe to our channel there. This content will be out there so that you can share it. We'll also have it through our social media channels, and we'll share this out as well so that our panelists can share this content through their channels also. So let's get started. This COVID thing really threw a wrench in everybody's plans for 2020. I know if you're like our congregation, we had these great plans. We got off to a wonderful start, January, February. By the end of March, the train started shaking, and by April, it was fully off the tracks. So how has the pandemic affected your ministry initiatives? And I guess we'll start out ladies first. Amber, how has the whole COVID pandemic affected things there at New Hope?
Well, welcome. Hi, everyone. We're glad you're here. And thank you all so much for having us represented from Fayetteville, Georgia. We're thrilled to be here. I feel like everything changed, right? And, you go from one Sunday, literally the Sunday before we closed was our big baptism Sunday. And we had baptisms at every campus. It was such a huge day of celebration. The next week we were planning to actually do like a big family group gathering, sit together Sunday experience. And no, that never happened because we immediately had to shut down. And what it caused us to do, I know a lot of people are using the word pivot, right? Like you kind of had to be planted and then shift and change and be flexible and find new ways to do things. I'll say for us, it really pushed us into a place where we started making the main things again in kind of a new way, a refreshing way. I have heard so many times that we kind of looked through the lens of people over programs. That's kind of the little phrase that we've been focusing on, making sure that the essentials were still going forth. So how can we make sure the word of God is still being presented every week? How can we make sure that our family groups are remaining connected? Family groups, it's kind of like our Sunday school small group format. And that usually happens on Sunday before or after worship. And we knew we had to make sure that those individuals stayed connected because that is the heartbeat of our church. And then right away, we tried to figure out ways that we could continue serving while social distancing. So for us, it was all about, who we are as a church. Our mission is that we're transforming lives, families, and communities through the revived people of Jesus. So how do we keep doing that? How do we make sure we're staying true to who we are, even though we're going to have to discover some totally interesting and innovative ways to kind of make that happen? And so for us, it was all about regrouping. We've met often as a staff team online, conversations, phone calls, just to make sure that we're also staying together as we're making decisions. We mentioned kind of in our pre-chat that we did a lot of surveys. So we were reaching out to our members to make sure we could just assess their needs and their interests. And of course, everything that we did from that day forward kind of had this new heightened awareness around safety and security and comfort and wellness, and just making sure that we considered all of those factors as we moved forward. So we had a new focus. I think it was a lot of what we've been doing, but kind of took us back to the heart of what was essential and most important, and making sure that we didn't focus too much on the luxury programs that are kind of the added icing on top of the cake, just to make sure we could get to the heart of what people needed during this crazy time.
Yeah, Tyler, what about you guys?
That's great. Well, hey, Chris, again, thank you so much for inviting me to join us here. Happy to come from the Milwaukee area with the Ridge Community Church. We have a couple locations in the Milwaukee area. Honestly, I kind of look back in February 2020. My role was different. I was serving as our family ministries director, overseeing all of our next gen teams, as well as serving as an executive pastor at one of our locations. And our lead pastor at the time shared with our staff, and then ultimately those who attended the Ridge, the three initiatives we were really going to go after in 2020. The three initiatives included, hey, we want to equip our entire church to be able to invest in what we call their one, their individual who is far from Jesus. And basically we say we want to help people help the people they love find the God who loves them. And then the second thing we wanted to do is we knew digital and physical was coming down the horizon. And so we wanted to go after that. And then the third thing is we wanted to identify our third campus and the leader for that campus. Well, COVID happened, and what's been very interesting for us is we've been actually able to do all three of those initiatives. All three have just been very different than what we thought they would actually be. We've been able to equip our entire church to invest in their one, and we've heard great stories of people connecting and basically bringing the church to them since people can't come to church. And then obviously the digital physical initiative, that got sped up really, really quickly. And during that time, my heart has begun to transition, and my lead pastor invited me, and I did not know what an online campus pastor was in January. And now I am serving as our online campus pastor. And what that means is we've taken our online broadcast and we've made our online campus just that. Everything we can do in person, we are making the commitment to do it online. And so I'm sure we're going to talk more about that to move in, but it's been really exciting for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. Chris, how about you guys out in Texas?
Building off of just what Tyler and Amber have said, we just prior to COVID, I'd had the whole church walk through a 40-day prayer exercise called Jesus Next Door. And basically where we were praying for the people in our neighborhoods over a series of 40 days and thinking through just being Jesus in our neighborhoods where we live. Well, COVID, basically the country's reaction to COVID, the second week of March and things shutting down, was actually the end of our Jesus Next Door 40 days. And so what was interesting is our people were kind of mobilized to be thinking, because their life shut down, what does it mean for me to be a person of Jesus where I live now that things are coming to a halt? And we saw some real blessing come from this, as we were, in one sense, of course, we know in part, we see in part, but we were actually being prepared for something on our end of things, because our people had a little bit of head start thinking missionally and intentionally in their neighborhoods when things came to a halt. And we were able to pivot pretty quickly and go to work thinking through, how do we help our people open up their homes on Sundays for breakfast, brunch, and perhaps view a portion of our online service and kind of customize that world. We started down that road, and then we had to pull back on that as the rates began to soar, and thinking about how to respond began to morph where we were. And we realized that we couldn't do that for a while. And so that actually bought us about 2 or 3 months to work on what we call the Branch at Home initiative, where we are encouraging people who are not caring for immune suppressed people and are not at risk themselves, if they're not ready to walk through the doors, to open up their doors to people in their neighborhood and encouraging people to kind of customize a Sunday morning in their home for people in their sphere of influence. And so the last few months have really been working toward that. So that's probably the biggest impact, is in the same way as in Acts 8, when persecution broke out, it wound up spreading the gospel all the more. I think when adversity broke out related to the virus, it actually, in some ways, helped our people to grow up more as priests and missionaries themselves in their own neighborhood. And we've been retooling to figure out how to equip them to help them do this during this time.
Now, a lot of congregations were streaming prior to the whole COVID thing. I think everybody here was. Did everybody here have an online stream prior to the pandemic? And if so, what changes have you made to how you're creating that content, organizing it, and maybe the goal of that content?
I would say for us that we had an online service. We weren't streaming our services on Sunday pre-COVID. We have a Thursday night service. That's our first service of the weekend. And we were taking that message from Thursday night and
merging it with a special time of worship that we were pre-producing. And so we were already doing kind of a pre-produced online service prior to COVID. And I'd say the big change is what Tyler was talking about. We were just putting it out there, but now we are mobilizing more personnel to truly pastor and shepherd that service, live chatting, so on and so forth. But we were already a little down the road of maybe pre-producing an online service for other reasons at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Thursday night service. So
yeah, kind of building off of what Chris shared there, we have a Thursday night service as well. And prior to the COVID season, we would take Greenfield's our broadcast location. We would take our Greenfield services and just stream them online at 9 and 10:30 a.m. on a church online platform. And we'd have a team of volunteers that would lead that. They'd engage in chat. They did a really, really good job. But what we discovered quickly is when we had to shift to being 100% digital, was that our mix in our auditorium really was only designed to serve one audience really well. And so we designed it to serve those who are attending Greenfield really well, but online it sounded okay at best. And they're just getting a contextualized service just for Greenfield broadcast online. And we really started thinking about it through the lens of our campuses. Like, we have a different mix, and we have campus pastors, and we have teams that are serving and speaking directly to those contexts. And so when we were starting to come back to meeting in person as well as online, we said we have to address these things. And so a couple of things we've done. We've customized what the service looks like. We know some of the things that work in the room don't necessarily work online. For example, starting off with 20 minutes of music. If you're watching online, it's not necessarily the most engaging. And so we've actually shrunk that down a little bit. We take our mix from our Thursday night service as well. Chris, you guys have that, and we post-produce that. So it sounds really good when we do that. Our hosting, welcoming announcements, we actually now do in this online broadcast studio. So I have a live host, or myself can speak directly into the camera, and all of our calls to action are those who are just viewing us online. And then we have the teaching content be pretty similar. So we stream at those times, but we make it 100% for our digital audience. And what's great is those who are in the room, it's 100% for those who are in the room as well. So we're able to serve both audiences very, very well.
And Tyler, when we were talking a few weeks ago, you mentioned something to me that I thought was really smart as well. Even some of the sets and the backgrounds you use for your broadcast, there's some intentionality behind those as well. Speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah. So Chris, what we've done, I'm actually sitting in our broadcast studio right now. I have some of the tech side behind me, but we've also, on the other side, I have glass, which I didn't turn to because of lighting right now, but glass with our cameras right now. When I'm hosting live, you can see people walking in, walking out. It can feel like you're a part of it. And part of it's a familiarity piece where others are like, oh, that's what it is. If they ever choose to come to any of our in-person services, we're hoping it'll feel a little bit more familiar with them. Now, they don't have to do that, but that's a piece that we've done. We've also kind of customized them where we have a living room approach. So we're able to make it customize each week to fit the mood for what we want to communicate to people.
Chris, can I add something? And I want to make sure Amber has a chance to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to build on what Tyler's saying, the reason we were pre-producing our online service and not streaming a service from a room, that was a product of somebody a lot smarter than me on our staff who's done this for a while. Is what Tyler said is so true. The music from streaming a live service does not come through the technology of people's living rooms. The mix is different. And so one of the things that we learned real rapidly is the importance of basically post-producing. Anything you're capturing live has got to be post-produced audio wise for an online service just because of the mix factor. So I wanted to emphasize that with Tyler. If you have that capacity, that's definitely a variable to consider. Otherwise, it feels like people in their living room are just voyeurs what's happening in the room. And maybe the purpose of online is a little bit different. Than you're not just trying to create a voyeur experience. You're really trying to engage people where they are.
Absolutely. Amber, what are you guys doing out there?
We all, great minds think alike, because I just feel so much of what you all are saying is exactly what we've been doing at New Hope. And I literally could not shout out our production team and our creative team enough, because we already had a live stream service that we were broadcasting out on Sunday mornings from our North Campus, in addition to Pastor Reese also being on the radio. But when all of this happened, of
Not
course,
me, by the way, a different Reese.
That's right. Pastor Reese Center. So, when all of this happened, I love so much that our leadership had the kind of foresight to say, same thing that I think both I heard Tyler and Chris mention, we have to reallocate people and resources to make sure that we can take this to the next level. And our production team has done an absolutely tremendous job with lighting and cameras and backgrounds and just making sure that everything is, as y'all mentioned, very pleasing and inviting for our audience at home. And I will say that some of the things that you all mentioned that have worked out really well for New Hope would be kind of what we're doing with the pre-show time. So we have started having different people host and interview not only just members of the New Hope team, but also people in the community. Pastor Reese interviewed Dan Cathy in the very beginning when all of this was happening. And that was such an interesting interview for people to make that connection and just kind of hear from people of influence in the community. We also have had people interviewed, like our kids ministry director, our family minister has been on and has shared some information. And it's been a nice way for the people to still feel connected. And Tyler, you mentioned like seeing the people in the background brings that familiarity and that comfort. And so for us, we've been having the faces that you normally see on Sunday that maybe you don't get a chance to stop and talk to, share kind of what their ministry has been about, how God's been working in their life, updates on things we've been praying for as a church. We've just used that time very intentionally to be connected with the people of New Hope. We've also added services. So we do now stream 2 services on Sunday and then 1 on Saturday night. Pastor Reese also films a midweek message on Wednesday night that people tune into, which can have different formats. We've used some of those Wednesday nights to host racial unity conversations. We've used some of those Wednesday nights just strictly for a word and an encouraging message. And we also get lots of updates from our senior pastor during those Wednesday night messages that really kind of, they don't feel like a town hall, but it's just kind of that feeling of like we're family and we're having a chat and we're connecting. And here are some updates and here are some things that you can think about. So I will again just shout out our production team. I mean, literally hands down, fantastic. And they've also, been creating the studio environment that you were mentioning, Tyler. We had one. I think they're trying to do some updates to create a new studio space and really just engaging people. What I think's been interesting about it, we get to see this particular ministry group walk in their gifts in a new way in this season. And a lot of times these are the individuals that you don't think about them because the mics work and the lights are on and you're not having issues. They're the ones you think about when there's a kink in the service and something goes wrong. Well, here they get a chance to be center stage and to glorify God with their unique gifts and talents. And so I think that's just been incredible to see.
Amber, you're going to make me cry. That's a ministry that I've been a part of for years. And no, you're absolutely right. And I can concur. You guys have some brilliant people. We interact with them quite a bit.
In fact, it's Tuesday in my ministry, and either I want them to come work with me or I want to quit and come work with them. That's what kind of Tuesday I'm having.
So one of the most powerful aspects of meeting together is community. So what are you guys doing? You've touched on it a little bit, but take a deeper dive into some of the things that you're doing to foster that sense of community and connection in either a fully online or a hybrid type environment.
Well, I'll jump in. I know, Tyler, you have a lot of stuff being an online campus pastor, so I'll get my little stuff out of the way first.
You're good.
We're leveraging our family groups, and that has been a huge blessing. So right away, we made sure that our family group leaders, our coaches, and those who our coaches are the ones that kind of oversee the family group shepherds. We made sure that we had Zoom training available. So we had someone come in and offer a weekend training to make sure everyone knew the basics about how to get online and how to lead a class from Zoom. And then we just, encouraged our family group shepherds, utilize this time in a special way to connect with people. And so we've always asked people to do the, call everybody on your roll every week and know how they're doing thing. To be honest, I'm not sure how much that was actually happening until the pandemic. And so we've seen now that people are extremely connected and know exactly what's going on with the people in their groups. So much so that they're serving. I know we mentioned trying to find socially distant ways to serve. We've got groups that are serving. We've got groups that are checking in on one another. We've got one particular group always makes me smile. We had a group of a senior ladies group that had kind of fallen off a little bit, maybe about 3 or 4 ladies. And it was still just such a wonderful group. And they were, still learning about God and enjoying one another. But as soon as the pandemic happened, we saw that group of 3 go to a group of 21. And it was just the most amazing thing, not just because of the numbers, but just to see them do something different and to really embrace the technology, because so often we kind of give our seniors a bad rep of saying they won't do it or they won't try it. And they were, they're proving that they are willing to do this. And so that group now has people who are able to join even from out of state. We've had some of our family groups that have people when they're doing different work in different countries before travel was kind of locked down a little bit. We had people joining from other countries as well. And so it's been absolutely wonderful to see the family groups grow in this dynamic. We also moved to offering our kind of equipping discipleship classes online. So we started that last spring and we will continue that into the fall. And that's been really nice to be able to bring in people, again, that weren't necessarily coming to campus that are now willing to make that time, carve out that time to connect with different people. So I know for us, that has been a huge pull, is just making sure that we're caring for our leaders so that they can then go out and continue that connection online. And the last thing, we have started in-person family group services as of 2 weeks ago. We're doing that in a hybrid format. So Chris, you mentioned, what the hybrid looks like. For those family group members that are not ready to return to campus, they can stream into the classroom where the teacher is on site and the teacher will teach those who are present as well as those online. We do have some classes that have not returned. They're not ready, and we're fine with that. We want everyone to follow their own convictions and do what they feel is best for them. But for those that were ready to come back, we are offering a hybrid format for a lot of those classes.
Well, that was well done. You guys are killing it. That's really good. So I think we've been learning a lot, just even the simple, some of these are just going to sound like very simple ideas that have just worked just because this season has forced us just to be creative. which has been a lot of fun. I think, like you, Amber, all of our groups went 100% digital right away. And some of the things we've noticed right away was our group engagement went up. And so even, like a regular attender, hey, we met every week. Well, maybe some people would hit 2 once a month there. Now, all of a sudden, they're a lot more consistent because it's just so much easier to click a Zoom link and gather. Some groups like mine in particular have a lot of young kids, and childcare for our group has always been an issue. And so we said, well, why don't we just meet later at 8:30 after the kids are going to bed? And some of our conversations honestly have been more like in-depth, honest, real conversations. And so our group has come back and said, do we want to follow a hybrid model where we'll do that twice a month and maybe come back in person once a month and just do a meal together with the kids or something to try to balance community there. So what we're doing now is we're kind of re-entering sort of a hybrid phase is with our existing groups, we're coaching them through those types of options because we want them to be able to kind of meet in person and connect community that way, or they can do digital if they feel more comfortable with that. We want to provide the tools there. I mean, we really don't necessarily care about the platform as much as long as they're connecting and having a form of community. All new groups for this fall, and as well as online, but even at all of our physical campuses will start digital just for a number of reasons. And we're just committed to that. But to onboard people who are brand new connecting with our services, we've taken our first step. It's not really a class. We call it a party. We call it after party. We put that online where they can come, we hang out and play some games and get to know them. And then we invite them digitally to check out what we call a short-term group. And we just want to give them a taste of small groups. And we build some felt needs content into some short-term groups. So whether it's around a message series that we're doing, whether it's financial peace or relationships or something that they feel like I need that. We hope that group experience is good enough, and we think it is, that they would want to continue to join a long-term group. And so then we do some things like Rooted Online, Alpha Online. We can complete all of that online there. And so really our goal over the season has just been, hey, everything that we've done through our physical locations, how do we just move that online that would be a better experience for those who are connecting with us digitally?
Yeah, we've been very similar in our approach. Our small groups, we about probably mid to late April started.
All of our small groups, we're a groups-based church, transitioned to Zoom, and much of the same response. They started meeting later at night, those with kids at home, in that regard. On a related note, one thing we found with our children's ministry and our students ministry, they're producing daily online content, and even on Sundays, they do their own material and experience. And one of the things we found with a lot of our families and small groups that were meeting together to do a Sunday service is that actually they were a part of what the kids were watching, or students were watching in some of the online content. And then on Sunday nights, the parents would watch the service.
Yeah.
And so we were finding that too. But again, a lot of our women's and men's discipleship groups all did Zoom. We have a pretty large Celebrate Recovery ministry. They went to Zoom, although that's had some challenges to Celebrate Recovery. They have some policies there and kind of had to morph and be flexible too. We just, in July, we began transitioning back to some in-person smaller gatherings. We did start offering 2 services on Sunday on one of our campuses in mid-June that, again, only about 10% of the church comes to. But in July, we started doing some experimenting with some small groups returning to in-person gatherings. All of our new member orientation and our initial discipleship stuff, 101 stuff, that's all online right now. And that's what we're starting with people. One of the things that I'm finding where I am in North Texas is I'm having to work with the church and helping them see we're dealing with 2 competing challenges here. There's responding to the seriousness and gravity of the virus on one hand, but there's also acknowledging the seriousness and the gravity of isolation. and trying to find that digital hybrid, maybe is a word, of realizing that we got two things going on here, and trying to find that magic mix of wanting to be responsible with our online offerings and wanting to incrementally still build in some in-person offerings is important as we're ministering to the whole person these days, and just letting people make up their own minds for what's right for them and their present responsibilities and who they live with in that regard.
Yeah. Chris, to build off of that, I think what we've been learning is people just want that choice, because we've offered in-person as well, and we've seen a small percentage start coming back at both of our locations. And I think what we've learned is a number are, there's probably three buckets. One will come back in person, another one will be digital only, and then another one may be comfortable with some smaller gatherings. And so we see this fall really as an opportunity to offer that with our digital gatherings. We provide those on, have it on YouTube, have it on demand, or send them a Roku link or whatever. And then they can watch at their house and fill up, their own watch parties. And then you can start your own microsites out that way. That's something we're going to start experimenting more with this fall, that I think is going to be a lot of fun, and it can be really cool to see that community build that way.
I agree with that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say on top of that, part of our kind of the branch at home starter kit we shipped out to some of our people who've signed up at their home a microsite is actually some financial aid. And it's a pretty some investment in this kit to help people really open up their home for something like this. And whether it's the provision of applications for Roku or whatever, to really make it possible for their home to be a microsite. We're excited about seeing where that happens in that regard. We're actually seeing people with older kids or whose kids are gone respond to that. I think people with smaller children at home are overwhelmed already with all that they have with kids at home.
Yeah.
One of the things we're finding is they're a little intimidated by having a bunch of people in their home who have other kids. So like I said, I think that's why the options are important.
Yeah.
That we have.
Well, I think that's where, this is cool to think about, the body of Christ. And Amber, you brought it up earlier with the production side, like those gift mixes are now being completely, displayed. I think the next movement we'll see with that is your hospitality gifts for those who want to be able to throw that in, who are good gatherers of people and can throw great parties. And they're great leaders, but they don't have to worry about the teaching or the worship or the production. Like, we get them the Roku, we get them what they need, and then they just gather, lead, and shepherd those people. I think it's going to be a cool new wave that we might be seeing over the next few months.
And I think it's kind of led us to just a new way to do ministry, right? Like, it started out as a response, but now I see it as more like a new avenue. It's not just something we had to do in response to a situation. Now it's getting us to really think there are so many great benefits to having multiple options. And I know for our, shout out to our kids ministry and also to our assimilation director, right away they decided we're going to figure out ways to have Zoom meetings for first graders, and we're going to figure out how to produce our praise place and put that out so that parents can tune in when they want to. Our assimilation director made sure to quickly host a virtual new members class online, and it was super well attended. And it's, it gets you to think like, well, why did we never think about this before? This isn't just something that we're going to do because we have to. We now see that these are opportunities that we can continue to embrace moving forward.
Yeah. Romans 8:28 comes to mind, right? He can take whatever whatever circumstances the enemy throws at us, right, and work those for good to build the kingdom. Many of you have mentioned, or all of you have mentioned, one of the things that you've been very intentional about is making sure you're equipping those leaders. Chris, you mentioned this kit. I'd like y'all to let's dig into that a little bit more. What does that really look like? What technology skill sets, how are you going about doing that and getting people comfortable with the tools that they need and teaching them maybe how to do a little bit different form of ministry that they weren't used to?
I'll just respond. A lot of how we're doing this is formed out of our own experience. some of our leaders on staff have been experimenting with this branch at home approach over the last few months, and it's more sharpened their understanding of what's possible, what's not, what's easy, what's really not easy. That's begun then to push out
what they're telling people that are like, hey, I'd like to try this in my home. So a lot of practically what we're doing is born out of our own experience already of having people in our home and seeing what's working, what's not. An example would be on what Tyler talked about, the idea of singing for 20 minutes in an online service probably doesn't compute for people in a living room in terms of watching that. And so we have learned that by doing it, but this isn't working, especially if you're having your neighbors in who may have no prior frame of reference. And so to Tyler's point about thinking through, telling our people, hey, the online content there's going to be probably less music or worship in that regard because of just the nature of how you're experiencing this.
Mm-hmm.
Born out of our own experience of realizing this probably isn't really connecting by watching the people in our living room. So that would be so our equipping is born more out of a little bit of our experience and experimentation. I'll stop there and let the other gang talk.
Go for it, Amber. I want to learn from you.
Well, just what we kind of mentioned before, we were just, making sure that we have exposed everyone to the resources that are out there. So immediately, we did offer the Zoom kind of intro course so you can learn how to get connected. We also provided a list of other kind of web sources that you can use if you want to connect. If, Zoom is not your thing and you want to do a Google Meet or, whatever it is, here are some other options. But what I think was probably most helpful in kind of getting everyone on the same page was kind of the encouragement and exhortation, if you would, from our pastor to be connected. And I think that's what drove people to, figure out what they're going to do, because I won't forget the Sunday where he mentioned like, hey, everybody, like, this is where we are. And so, we can't not connect, and we can't, risk being, as you mentioned, Chris, isolated from one another. We need each other. That is the body of Christ. We need one another. And so, he just encouraged us to figure out what you need to do to get connected and to continue to go to your family group and to continue to be a part. And so with the team that I'm on, the ministry development team, we work very closely with the family group shepherds who lead all of the family group classes to stay connected with them. I'll say another huge piece of what we found to be important, and I think I see our family minister, Mel Turner, on the chat log today. So he will back me up 100%, and I'm probably stealing some of his words. But we just also tried to emphasize the wellness aspect of leading family groups, because you're not doing your usual day-to-day as a shepherd during this pandemic. You're taking on a lot of additional responsibilities. You're caring for your people in a very different way. And so in addition to the technological support that we wanted to make sure every group had, we're also trying to be very closely connected to our leaders to make sure that they're not, pouring out at the expense of not being poured into themselves and not having the ability to kind of let us know how they are with their own personal wellness. I think that's something that we've talked about more in the past few months than we have previously, about the toll that this is taking on everyone, particularly ministry leaders, but also just day-to-day life for everyone is different and complicated, and can be a lot harder than anyone anticipated that it would be. And not just with the coronavirus, but with the racial unrest. I mean, we're entering into this highly divisive political climate. There's just so much going on, and we have to make sure that everyone is well taken care of, just as people, to be able to do well and to serve well in any capacity.
When I think it comes to serving and leaders, and what we learned, and I think most of us even learned this from our staff side, but I think we also learned this from those who were serving as volunteers. So much of it was building focused, and that Sunday morning, Thursday night focus. And so there was a lot of pivoting that has had to happen. And so I think one of the great shifts that happened was the emphasis of like, okay, since we can't gather in a large capacity anymore, how do we mobilize our people to serve their community? And something that we continue to have done and continue to need to put more of an emphasis on. One of the things I'm proud of is we were able to partner with about a dozen other churches locally to do a massive food drive and just restock all the shelves of several local food banks here. And we were able to do that there, but continue to get that cost and then equip our people to really bring the church to them. And so I mentioned the one initiative that we have there where we're given just practical ideas of how can you love and serve and build relationships with your neighbors and those around you. But to be honest, I noticed two different types of team members. I think one is, hey, they're a little bit more flexible and they're willing to pivot and they can pivot easier. Others, it was a little bit more of a challenge. And I think that, because they're used to structure and used to that and everything has shifted on them, as Amber's mentioned it, and they're just rocked from that. So we said, how do we care for this? But we're even realizing this more as we're starting to come back and have some in-person services where we have, I'll use kids, for example. About a third of our kids team members have said that they're quote unquote ready to go back. And we've had this term that we've used. Well, what about those other team members that are quote unquote sidelined that aren't necessarily serving like that? And so the conversations we're having is there's still kids and there's still team members. And so how do we shift their role to make sure that they continue to care, even though it might not be in a building? How do they bring our kids content to them, not just digitally, but do we deliver care packages that they hand deliver and they call the moms and they set up play dates and stuff, again, using the comfort level that they might have. And so there's still levels of shifting that we're still figuring out as far as serving goes.
Yeah, I love that whole concept of, this pandemic has forced us out of the, I guess that spectator mode, right? Meeting as the church. And now we're mobilized to go out and be the church in our communities. And you've hit on this a little bit with those ministry opportunities. Talk a little bit more about that with different aspects. So you've got the psychological component, right? Looking in on neighbors, the mental health, not only of your own leaders, but and members, but also just folks in the neighborhood, the pantries that need to be filled up. There's a lot of people that, especially if you're living in a state that's still largely shut down, that no longer have a job. They're trying to figure out, okay, well, once this is over and once the government money's over, that already wasn't enough, once the mortgage forbearance is over, what then? So what opportunities have you seen to be able to serve, and what are you guys doing to address those needs?
One thing, a couple things. I think working with under-resourced family households as it relates to food is really important, that a lot of our churches can do.
We took care of a couple of hundred families, the same families around our campus this summer, feeding them every week, and mobilized our small groups to do the delivery of the food every week, and to pray with these families. I think that's important. Every church's financial situation is different. We actually gave each one of our small groups $500 seed money to do something with in their neighborhood. And if they wanted to chip in on top of that, they could. But we've tried to reallocate our church budget in some ways to really give our small groups seed money to do things of love or service with people who are in need in their neighborhoods. And so that's one example of something we've tried to do these last few months, and people are taking us up on that. And as we're reallocating kind of church expenditures that way right now. Another thing we're doing is we're reallocating church expenditures. Again, every state's different, but we will pay for childcare so that groups of adults in smaller groups can gather in homes, prayer or for fellowship. So we're trying to do some different things with our church budget to really help people care for one another or help people be together in some smaller micro ways. I'll stop there.
I'll say I know you all are probably were in a very similar boat, but when all of the mission trips got canceled, it was like everyone's like, come on, we've got all this time and these people we're connected to, and we want to serve, and like, what can we do? We want to be safe, we want to be responsible, but we want to do something. And so our creative team and our missions team came up with what we were calling Adopt a Cause. And it was just a link that was included on one of our websites that would allow members to find a way that suited them to get involved. And so some of those missions included, we had drive-through prayer at our local hospital. So a set time of the day where people could go and stay in your car, if you want to do something and be a part of something, but not necessarily get out of your comfort zone, come to our local hospital at a certain time of day and pray. We also have mask maker teams. So teams that were, sewing masks and distributing them. We actually give those out on Sunday because we are asking our members to wear face coverings as they travel about campus. And so, that is another way that people were able to kind of plug in. One of the sweetest things that we've seen is came out of our kitchen ministry. Our kitchen ministry team has continued to meet online, and they were thinking, what can we do? We've got food. We love to cook and serve, and we just want to do something. And so they have been faithfully delivering meals. I think they're up to about 50 at this point, every single Wednesday, to people who are either shut in or unable to get out and about to get things on their own with ease. And so that has been awesome. We've had so many people be a part of that group where they pray, and they, as you said, I think Chris, you said, not just dropping off the meal, but also praying with people, because a lot of these individuals are isolated. Mm-hmm. And they're alone. And so they're, being able to kind of engage in that way has been really tremendous. Again, our family groups, part of having a family group and being a family group, we encourage them to do their own ministry opportunities. And so a lot of family groups are finding ways to serve, of course, with social distancing in mind, but ways to kind of engage their neighbors and to get people connected. So we try to create a specific hub on our website to continue to update so that people know ways that they can be involved with serving, even though it may not look the way that it used to.
Yeah, are any of y'all using nextdoor.com to encourage people to reach out? Are y'all familiar with that tool?
Is that the one where you pray for your neighbor and it shows you like the people in your neighborhood? Maybe that's a different app.
I think that's a different app. Okay. This is a it's a micro social app. You actually have to be
in your neighborhood
confirmed or verified that you're part of that particular neighborhood to participate in it. But it's a great way we've found to connect with neighbors and to put something out there and find out who has a need. We may have lost, I think we lost Chris's video.
Oh. Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you. Yeah, we just lost your video.
All
Tyler,
right.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we actually we have a leader on our staff who is our local and global, we call her a compassion director, and so she connects with organizations that are just hitting it out of the park and connects our people, and we make beautiful things happen. But the main goal that we want to do is, we don't want our name stamped all over everything. I mean, we want to partner with people who are getting it done and just resource them however we can. And that's just been our plan even before all of this happened. But a couple of the big needs that we're like, we know we could do something. I mentioned the food drive earlier, where we're able to rally churches together and just get people in and donate that or serve and organize. That was huge. We've had blood banks. The blood shortage has just been so low. So we've just opened up all of our facilities to just go use what we have and do that. In fact, we have one being set up outside of me right now, which is great. And then the one we're hearing about now is, the other big thing that we did is we tried to just make it, we did a Give Help, Get Help tab page on our side where people can give to this and they can get that. And then the other aspect that we're hearing right now is schools. And a lot of schools locally are going virtually. Some are still trying in person. I mean, it's kind of each school district's trying to figure it out, just like we as churches are trying to figure it out. we're asking the question in here, and how can we help provide a space for the single moms that are trying to figure out virtual learning, or families that maybe necessarily can't afford childcare, but yet have to figure this out. And so I don't know. We have some ideas what the answer is. I can't go public with those yet, but that's something where we're just trying to listen to what our community is saying. Hey, this is a need, and respond that way. Two other things that come to mind. We've done a lot more funerals, and we do our funerals for free because there's just been a lot of people waiting. And so our staff's doing a lot more funerals. And then as much as we've said, hey, we have to continue to focus on the community, which we have to, we need to, we've also shifted some of our staff members to oversee and make sure that the people in our church are being cared for as well. Are we calling everyone in the database, checking in on everyone, making sure that they have what they need as well?
Yeah, that connection is so important. So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I appreciate you guys all being so generous, because I know your days are full. Last question: as you kind of look forward, what do you see do you see the landscape shifted permanently? Is this now just a part of ministry as you see it, and a part of the larger game plan within your congregation? What's going to stay, and what do you view as temporary at the moment?
I'll go ahead and respond to that. There's so much I don't know. I was thinking about an article that Andy Crouch and someone else wrote a couple months ago about, are we in a blizzard, a winter, or an ice age?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a blizzard, which we all thought it was maybe in March, you just hunker down and wait for it to blow over. If it's winter, you adjust. You've got to go out, get supplies, care for people, go to work, and you figure out how to live in less than hospitable conditions with certain limitations. It's an ice age, then some things are going away forever.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all know it's not a blizzard. The jury's out whether or not this is winter or an ice age. I think that we're definitely being forced to realize how much more can be done online, and we were forced to get our online game together, and we're still learning. That's where people are. I also think that we're going to go back to the question of recovering. What do we expect to happen? What is the purpose for people gathering in person in an embodied presence, whether you're talking about in a home, in a micro gathering, or in a larger facility of a few hundred people? What are you trying to accomplish in gathering people in presence together that screens cannot do? So, and what is it that needs to go by the wayside? I think we're going to return to asking those questions, because there is something about being in the embodied presence of other people, but we're still trying to put our finger on what is it and what can be accomplished. What should we shoot for in that forum that can't always be done in a strictly online digital forum with somebody by themselves in front of a screen. So I think we're going to have to recover kind of a theology or a sense of what are we trying to accomplish when we gather? And a lot of that fat's been trimmed off by the experience. So I'm still pondering all that. I do think what we're discovering in the online world is here to stay for us, that we've needed to embrace some things and wake up to some things. I'll say that. I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I'll jump off of that, Chris. I think to go off of your Andy Crouch analogy, hearing Carey Nieuwhof always ask that question: is this an interruption or a disruption? And I think our answer, I know our answer is that this has become a disruption, but I think in a very good way, where the opportunity really is to us to really hold on to the fact that church is not, hey, come to a service and sing a few songs and listen to a message and then go there. I mean, as great as an experience that has been, that's not handing the church off to people to bring the church to other people who need the church. And so I think we're going to see opportunities for a lot of creativity. a lot of innovation and a lot of leadership development where they can take, whether it's gathering people online through Twitch on video games or something on YouTube or Facebook or to in their neighborhoods or prisons or nursing homes. I mean, the opportunities really are endless, and it's so scalable to say, okay, hey, here's some digital tools that you can take. Now gather people, and we're going to come alongside you and help you to be developed as a leader to care for these people. I think the opportunities to see the church grow, maybe not by our old scoreboard, but I think with this new way, which ultimately I think is how the early church grew, is here to stay. And so, which is just really exciting.
Yeah, I think of the sending out of the 72, right? Everybody been following Jesus, and man, this is really cool. Now he turns around and goes, okay, it's your turn.
Yeah.
I echo the excitement. I think, that there are some things that we are learning that we've seen that it just makes sense to go in that direction and to do, online at the highest level that you can, because why not? If you're going to have an online presence, why not do that in excellence, right? And serve to the best of your ability. I will say, similar to what Chris said, we do wrestle with that feeling, nothing beats being in the house of God with God's people. And there's just something so very special and uplifting and honorable about being amongst your brothers and sisters and singing praise to God together. I mean, there's just something beautiful about that, that we have, especially as believers, to get to come and be family together and do that. And so, I think we'll have to be creative and thoughtful around what that looks like. We can no longer do that carelessly. We have to really be mindful about safety and security in ways that maybe we didn't before. So I think there will be a constant tuning and retuning of what that looks like. But I do think that's something so special and unique that we have as believers that we'll want to continue to uphold as precious. But along those same lines, what are the things that we can do strictly online that, we've been doing them in person just because that's what we did, that now, it makes more sense to have that late night discipleship class that ends at 8:30 online so that people aren't getting in their cars and getting home at 9 and 10. There are things that are just that will be better suited to do in that way. And I think another huge piece moving forward that we all have to continue to think about is just, I think we're experiencing some kind of sifting in a way where you guys kind of mentioned people can't just sit back in this new environment. People are kind of, either falling away or they're stepping up. And in some ways, I think it's exciting to see, that true church kind of emerging and that spirit of, we're all in this together. And, Christ has said to us that they'll know you're my disciples by how you love one another. And like to really see this love in action in a way that we haven't seen before, serving one another, but also reaching out to the community. I think we're going to really get closer to the heart of what this is all about. And so that excites me that, we can really make the main thing, simplicity where it's needed so that we're really focused on what counts. It's not, Tyler, you mentioned we may have new metrics and we may have to measure things and do things in a different way, but if what we're getting to is true conversions and people really walking a life that praises God, then whether it be 1 or 1,000, who cares? Or whether it be in the big building or in your house, I think what we're getting to is the heart of what matters most. And so that excites me to think about where we are going as believers.
To add to that, one of the most impactful things people have responded to in our time is pretty much every week we've shown pictures of people being baptized in their swimming pool or in a hot tub. And it's recaptivated our
people to be thinking this is where the kingdom should be breaking out in our neighborhood. And to that end, the scattering, Acts 8 and verse 2, who would have thought when the persecution broke out, some people thought that was the end of the church. That was the beginning of the witness globally. And I think the scattering that's happened is good and will continue to happen. And we're going to learn how to partner with it in an intentional way. So I appreciate you hosting this because that's what this has been about, is how to partner with this thing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to our entire panel, Tyler, Amber, Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you to those that attended online. I know you know some people to whom this information will be useful. We trust you've gotten some great ideas, and I also pray that God will continue to bless the efforts of the three of you guys and what's going on in your church, and that we'll be able to share the good news with all that many more people right now. So thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to see
All
you
right.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.